So hi everyone, welcome. So this is my coach's thoughts on training for the Old Ghost Road. This is part 4. This is about the last block of training. So I've just completed my last big block of training, which was 4 weeks. I've got an easy week this week. I have a hard week next week, and then it's essentially a 2-week taper down to the race. So I just wanted to talk about the last block. It's been a interesting block. There's been some milestones. There's been a few wobbles, and I had to reassess a few things. But so I want to talk through it. So first milestone was I had my first ever week of running 100 kilometers in total volume, which was that was something I wouldn't think was possible a year ago. If you told me I'd be in a position where I could run 100 k's in a week, I would have gone, ooh, hammies would have gone, or calves would have gone. So that was it was quite a cool milestone. Unfortunately, that milestone also led me into the next week where we had some wobbles, and that's a bit that I want to talk about. It'll be the part of the focus of this this little talk, and that was hindsight's a wonderful thing. I kind of see where I went wrong, and I've made notes of that going forward. And where I went wrong is I ended up having basically 5 days of running in a row, and one of those runs I needed to probably pull the pin on, and that was probably my Monday run, which is an easy run home from work. I think the accumulation of the previous week and the weekend, and then into Monday, the reality is I have a physical job. I'm a massage therapist as well as my clothing brand, and I'd had 5 or 6 hours on my feet. I think it was about 6 clients, so I was about 6.5, 7 hours on my feet, and then ran home. Then the next day was hill reps in the forest, which was about 19k run, and then on the Wednesday I was to do a run in the forest of about 20-25k's. And I got to Wednesday and I was in that run and I just exploded. And the point I want to make about that is when I was in the run, and one of the things I've been trying to achieve with this build is being comfortable running on tired legs, because fundamentally that's what you're doing, and trying to focus on having kind of good form and maintaining forward movement when I'm fatigued. But there's a difference between being fatigued and being tanked and being in a bit of a hole. And that's where I was on Wednesday. And I think the key thing is sometimes you need to differentiate it doesn't matter what you're training for, but sometimes you need to differentiate between whether you are in a hole and you actually need to rest and pull back, because if you carry on, you go into overtraining, versus when you're actually just being soft and you need to harden up and carry on. And sometimes that's a really hard, and sometimes that when you're being, for one, where you're being weak, for want of a better term. That's a harsh way to say it, but I think sometimes that also might be other stuff going on in your life. And it might be that something going on with work, something going on with your relationship, or some other outside influencer that's kind of distracting you, and the moment it kind of gets tough, that you kind of crumple a little bit. And on some level that's okay, but if it keeps happening, then you need to start having a look at self, because some days life gets on top of us and we just need to step back, because fundamentally this is a hobby, not our job. Alternatively, it is important to realize that if you are deep in a hole, that sometimes you actually just need to rest. And that's where I was on Wednesday. Like, I've been an endurance athlete for 30 years, so I'm fortunate that I'm in a position to be able to differentiate between the two. And so I kind of took a couple of rest days, and then had a slightly easier weekend. And that was, as it turns out, that was a smart thing to do, because I actually bounced back reasonably quickly, which was a good sign. I mean, to complement that decision, my data from my smartwatch was kind of indicating that I was in a bit of a hole. And the thing with my smartwatch is I don't wear it all the time. Like, I don't wear it when I'm massaging things, so it doesn't get a full picture of what I do in a day. So I know that the data I get from that's inaccurate to a degree, and I'm probably, whatever it's telling me, I'm actually probably worse. So And that's the thing with if you're looking at all like HRV scores and your body battery and all of that stuff, make sure if you're using that data that it's accurate and that it paints the whole picture. It's one of those things where sometimes technology is great. Sometimes if you overthink the technology and not have a look at it holistically and look at the big picture, you might be selling yourself short or just getting it a bit wrong. So I kind of regrouped, had a decent week, and then last week was another milestone, and that was my longest ever run, which was 50 Ks, and did that on the Old Ghost Road course at the Lyle end. And that run was basically, because that's where you finish on the Old Ghost Road, so that run was basically 25 Ks up, turn around 25 Ks back down. I used the Lyle Saddle Hut to get water, had all my nutrition with me, and the key things that I wanted to get out of that run was a long climb with my poles, and then that really long descent on fatigue legs. And there was a lot that came out of that run. I actually learnt a lot, and part of it is that I think I'd been living in a false sense of security. So prior to that run, I'd actually, like the weekend before Christmas, we'd gone over and I'd run from the start at Seddonville into the first hut and back out, and that was a 34k run. And then came down to the Lyle end and did 8.5k up, 8.5k down. And that run was about, seeing how I'd run on fatigue legs. And like I flew down that mountain in that run, and yeah, that actually wasn't fatigue legs. There's a bit of a difference doing that when you've had a night's recovery versus hitting 10Ks to go and you've got 40 kilometers in your legs before you hit that last 10Ks. So that was a bit of a wake-up call and a bit of a reality check. So I'm pleased I did that, because it was a kind of a little reminder that it's going to be hard on the day. So that was a bit of a wake-up call, and it was definitely worth doing it. And the other thing is, it was worth going up to where Lyle Hut was, and it was also worth going up onto the ridgeline essentially to see what that was like, and that was definitely worth doing. I got to the 25k mark, and the initial plan had been to potentially go to Heaven's Door, which I think was another kilometre up. But I got to the 25k mark and the weather was closing in a bit. Like I'd already put my jacket on because there'd been some showers just before I got out of the bush line. And so I got up to the 25k mark, and it's like, I wasn't sure what the weather was doing. And that's the thing when you're training in this country and you're going bush, that the weather can change reasonably quickly, and so you need to be prepared. Like on the way back down, I put on my beanie, I put on my gloves, and I had waterproof pants if I needed them as well, and I had another thermal tucked in there. So, and that's the thing, if most of these races have emergency mandatory gear that you need to take. My advice is that go have a look at those, and make sure you're carrying stuff, because they have a reason that you carry that gear. And it's also good to train carrying the weight of your pack. The extra thing that I had in my pack was my little mascot Duncan, the dragon, and that was to get some photos for social media, which you may have seen a few. And so, but he was only there because I had room. If I had needed more emergency gear, I wouldn't have taken him, because safety becomes more important than social media. So it's one of those things where, just if you're doing this sort of stuff in training, just be safe, make smart decisions, because you could get into a life-threatening situation very, very quickly, and nobody wants that. And search and rescue don't want to be going up a mountain rescuing and you find out that you're in shorts and a t-shirt and you've got a ham sandwich with you, and that's all. So just be smart. So that was interesting with the weather closing in. And the other interesting thing is I got up past, there's an emergency shelter up on the ridgeline. So coming from there back down to the Lyle Saddle Hut, that trail was a lot more technical than I thought it would be. When I say technical, it's not super technical, but it's really rocky and it's a bit rutted. And bear in mind you're hitting that with quite a lot of fatigue in the legs, so it's a case of I may use my poles coming down that section just for stability and safety, and that'll be the call on the day. But I now know to be prepared for that little section, because that is the reality. The bottom half of the trail, like the bottom 10 Ks, it's actually pretty groomed, and it's actually really nice to run. And so to go a little bit further up and see that, that's a bit more nuggety, for want of a better term, was really worth doing, because it won't be a surprise on the day. So learned a lot about that part of the course. The other thing is I was practicing locking down the last few things, playing around with my nutrition. And one of the concerns I had is, I did talk about nutrition in a supplemental video that I did, but the one thing I've added in to that is, and I was just a bit worried about maybe not having enough solids or needing something a bit solid in my stomach. Like in an Ironman, I can fuel on liquids all day and not worry about solids. I think this event and running, it's a little bit different. Your energy requirements are a little bit higher because you're not sitting on your bum for 5.5 hours. You're actually running, So I think the thing for that is that came up with strategy to try. My lovely wife Nicola made me some meat and potato, mince and potato sort of little pastry things that are about that size, and like a pasty type pie type thing. And so I took a few of those, and that was lovely, because it was just the savoury taste and getting some solids in my stomach. That was definitely worth trialling, and I'm going to rock that on race day. I'll have those in special needs. So special needs, which is at the halfway point, you can actually have extra stuff. So I'll have extra gels, I'll have extra rice, my rice bubble bar, and I'll have the minced potato pie type things, and that'll actually be a nice taste change at that point of the race before I head up the mountain, because that's pretty much where you really start climbing. So it was really worth doing. Locked all of that stuff in now. So the key thing for the next couple of weeks is this week's focus is recovery, and I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm also mindful that there's possibly an underlying layer of fatigue, that if I just go, I'm feeling great, let's just do a wee bit more, that's what I would call a dumb mistake. So I'm conscious of the fact that I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm sticking to the plan and letting my body recover. Then next week's a massive week, get through that, and then it's taper time. So next week will be 90 to 100 k's of running, then it'll be about 50 k's of running, and then it'll be race week, there'll be very little running. So that's kind of the plan through to the race. And what I will do is I will do a race plan post before the race, just give you an idea about race plans and kind of how I think, and kind of what the little things that I'm planning on, just to help me get through, or what my strategies are and what my mindset is. So hopefully that'll be beneficial. If you're doing Old Ghost Road and you're watching this, I hope you've found some stuff that's been helpful. Probably too late to implement any change, but hey, the key thing is if you are doing it, look forward to seeing you on race day. I'm a bit terrified now. The more I've seen of the course, every time I've been on that course and seen more of it, I've actually added probably half an hour to what I thought I would do from a racing point of view. But it's going to be a cool day out, and I'm so looking forward to it. I haven't seen the middle section, but I'm actually looking forward to that actually being part of the journey of discovery. So that's enough for me, and I will see you in the next episode. See you later. Bye-bye.